Hello, and welcome to everybody joining us on YouTube today. This is a RedLine Solutions webinar with the title, What Can You Do to Prepare for FSMA Compliance as the Dates Get Close? It was recorded on the 12th of October 2016 and presented by our very own CEO, Todd Baggett. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Todd.
Very good. Thank you, Adrian, and welcome everybody. We're glad to have you join us, and this is an important one because what we're seeing is that the FSMA compliance is actually moving forward now, and there's things that you can be doing to prepare. So let's jump right into it. Our agenda today is I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of some of the background information on what traceability is and why it's needed, and some of the industry and government responses that are going on for those of you who are needing a little background. We're also going to talk a little bit about the state of things today. You know, is our produce traceable, and do the retailers have things implemented, and where we're going with other groups as well. We'll also be talking about what that traceability model looks like, as well as the software offerings that RedLine has, followed by the Q&A. So let's jump right into it. As my quote suggests here, the key to creating a safer food supply really lies in the science of food safety. Traceability is the safety net because things don't always go as planned. So if we look at food safety versus traceability, food safety is about analyzing risks and implementing preventive controls while the product is in your facility. Traceability is more about knowing where that product came from and where it went. One step forward and one step back is not new. In fact, it's been federally mandated in the U.S. since the Bioterrorism Act of 2002. Food safety is really more science-based, and traceability is information-based. Food safety is really about documented processes, and that those processes have to be repeatable, and also excuse me just a second here, I'm going to close the window. And then also they have to be brought throughout the organization, which means within your company you need to train your workers, show them the processes, and then monitor those processes to ensure that they're done correctly. When we get over then to the food safety side of this, what we'll see is that we also have to have worker training, and the difference here is that participation is required by everybody in the supply chain, because really, as you're looking at the one step forward and one step back, if somewhere in the middle that gets broken, the information link is broken as well. Okay, so moving forward here, we go. Food safety is really more of a proactive, whereas traceability is a reactive part of the market. So let's look at what traceability really is. It's about recording the movement of the product and the associated lot numbers throughout the supply chain. Forward traceability identifies where the product and lot number was shipped from, and backwards traceability identifies the source and the source lot of traceability. And then process traceability is really the visibility into which processes, equipment, packing lines, crews, etc. we're actually working on that specific product. So really it all starts at the source, and we have to track that product movement through the various stages from harvest, receipt, processing, packaging, and its whole journey along the shipment trail. Ultimately, that information winds up on which store or restaurant did that product get delivered to. So let's look at some of the benefits of traceability. Traceability is expedited by having the electronic records, which allows access to make that investigation go faster. The obvious benefit of this is that it pulls tainted product from the market faster to reduce illness and death. The not so obvious benefit of this is the protection for the other growers of that commodity. Taking a focused approach instead of the old school thinking of disposing of everything of that commodity in the market really changes the game. This keeps the cleared product in commerce and financially protects the growers that were not involved and the produce industry as a whole. More importantly, it changes the message we send to the consumer. Instead of don't eat cucumbers, it becomes don't eat cucumbers from a specific grower and some specific lots. The first one reduces consumer confidence across the entire commodity. The second method improves confidence by helping consumers see that the problem has been identified and isolated. So when FSMA passed, the data that was presented to Congress and the President to justify the existence of FSMA was this. And this came from a CDC study in 2011 that said 48 million Americans will get sick each year from some type of a foodborne illness. 128,000 will require hospitalization and 3,000 will die. According to the Alliance for Food and Farming, 22% of all foodborne illnesses are produce related. So if we extrapolate that, that takes us to 10.5 million people per year who have produce related foodborne illness. Of those, approximately 16% of those are from improper handling after leaving the farm, which really leaves us 6% of the foodborne illnesses, or roughly 2.9 million Americans per year, who are sickened by pathogens that came from the growing, packing, or shipping processes. Now, looking a little bit further here into our consumption patterns, the foundation, the Produce for Better Health Foundation said the average American ate almost 700 pounds of fruits and vegetables in 2014. Here I've listed some of the significant produce recalls over the last decade. And as we look at these, there's really two that stand out in my mind as significant events that really shaped where we got to today. And that is the 2006 E. coli outbreak tied to spinach. It caused 199 illnesses and 3 deaths. And it was really the big wake-up call for the food safety in the produce industry. And it started the current produce traceability movement. The results were devastating for spinach growers across North America. 71% of people stopped buying spinach and 16% stopped buying lettuce. Spinach consumption has still not returned to the 2006 levels 10 years later. And then in my opinion, the 2009 outbreak of salmonella in the U.S. that was in peanut butter was really the tipping point for the federal regulations, which we will look to here in just a few minutes. The executives of that company who saw the information about tests that pointed to salmonella and said ship it anyway are now incarcerated in federal prison. So let's take a quick peek at the 7 milestones of PTI. So obtain a GS1 company prefix. For those of you who don't know, GS1 is the regulatory body that actually keeps track of barcodes and RFID. The second part is to assign a GTIN, and I apologize, it's not till the next slide that we get into what a GTIN really is, but right now just associate it as a number that is associated to a product and a pack style that you're producing. You then communicate that information about those product and pack styles and the numbers you've assigned to your buyers. You place a human readable and barcode label on the case, and then after that it kind of gets more to the receiving side, and they are to read and store the inbound traceability data. This does apply to you if you're purchasing in product, and then to read and store that outbound traceability data. And if you want to see the complete PTI milestones, the official website is shown here, producetraceability.org. So let's look at the very specifics of what is required. Each case must have a label that contains this global trade identification number. And what that is composed of is 2 pieces of data. As a brand owner, you will have a prefix that will be in the beginning of this number, and then after that you will have a pack style that identifies that particular product, commodity, variety, pack style. The second part that you have to have is the lot or the batch number, and the third is the PTI voice pick code. And that's required because some of the large retailers are not actually using barcoding in their distribution operations. They're using voice systems, and this allows us to take the information from that GTIN and lot number, run them through an algorithm to get to 4 significant digits. Now, if we look at the second label down below, that's the reusable plastic container, or RPC label, and that has become the standard. And if we look at that, it's currently being used by Walmart on all cases and RPCs, and is preferred by Whole Foods. And then some of the retailers who are not yet doing produce traceability, Safeway, Kroger's, Loblaws, are still requesting this label on the RPCs because they're using it for in-store product rotation. So, as we get into this, when we talk about PTI stands for Produce Traceability Initiative, and really FSMA is going to take that to the next level. We'll talk a little bit more about what's going on, but with FSMA, the Food Safety Modernization Act, it became law in 2014, and it is really the most sweeping change to our food safety laws in over 70 years. And it really shifted the focus of the FDA. No longer is FDA looking at chasing the problem after the fact. Their focus is now preventing issues from happening in the first place through best practices in food safety. So all these regulations are now out, and the enforcement will be phased in over the next 1 to 3 years. Again, I've got a hyperlink in here, so if you want to go to the FDA website and get deeper into this, you may. So let's look at those final rules here. First of all, we have the produce safety rule, followed by two that go closely together: preventive controls for human foods and preventive controls for animal foods. We also have the introduction of a foreign supplier verification plan. So this is for people who are bringing product in and basically saying, look, you need to meet the same standards we hold here in the U.S. And because there's a foreign supplier verification plan, they needed to have an accredited third-party certification program. And that's going to be the people, these third parties, who are going to actually verify that the activities done in this foreign facility meet the U.S. activity standards, I should say. The sixth one here is the sanitary transportation of human and animal food, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the last one here is the protection against intentional adulteration. One common element among all of these is that the FDA is saying when we request information, we need it in an electronic format and we need it within 24 hours. So let's do a little bit deeper dive into some of these. The produce safety rule really creates the standards for growing, harvesting, packing, and holding of produce for human consumption. It was published last November in 2015, and the effective date was actually January of this year. There are some exemptions for some categories that are almost always cooked before consumption. And also what I want to point out is that there's some different compliance dates based on the size of the company and the type of operation. So probably this is the important part here. If you're a very small business, which in this case is defined as $25,000 to $250,000 in annual produce sales, you have until January of 2020 to be compliant. For small businesses that are deemed to be $250,000 to $500,000 annual produce sales, the compliance date is 2019, and for all other farms, and that is anybody who's selling over $500,000 a year in produce, that'll be in 2018. So moving on to the next one here, which is the, get my mouse going back over to this, there we go, the preventive controls for human foods. So preventive controls for human foods, the effective date was actually 11/16/2015. So this is actually into effect now, and there are, again, different compliance dates. What I want to point out here is that as you're looking at these different rules, the definitions change by the rule. So you can't have one definition, unfortunately, that falls across all rules. You have to pay attention to this. In this case, the very small businesses, which are defined as under $1 million in human foods, plus the value of the product that was produced but was unsold, have to be compliant by November of next year. The small businesses have to be compliant by November of 2017, and those small businesses are defined as less than 500 full-time employees, and all other businesses have to be compliant in November of this year, less than a month away. So again, notice these definitions by the rule, because this will come up again. Now, I'm not going to get into the animal transportation, but as we get into sanitary transportation of human foods, again, the publication date was 2016. The effective date was 2016 of June, and basically, a small business here is defined as under 500 employees and less than 27.5 million in revenues of trucking companies, and they have to be compliant by 2018. And all other businesses have to be compliant next June of 2017. So as we can see, with the preventive rules and the sanitary transportation preventive control rules, if you're over 500,000 in produce sales, that applies in less than, really at this point, less than 30 days. And for others, here on the transportation side, we're talking about basically a year. So moving right along here, our next one here is the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. And really, if we think about this, the goal of this is to verify that the food imported to the U.S. has been produced in a manner that meets applicable U.S. safety standards. The publication was done in November of 2015, with the effective date actually was this January. Compliance dates are 18 months after that original publication of the final rule, which in this case for foreign supplier means that that'll be July of 2017. If an importer is a manufacturer or processor subject to preventive controls, then those dates will apply. Okay, accredited third-party program, really it establishes a voluntary program for the accreditation of these third-party auditors who will conduct the food safety audits and issue certificates to those foreign facilities and the foods that they produce. Again, publication date was November of 2015. The effective date was January of this year, and the FDA intends to implement this program as soon as possible after the final fees and rules were published. So this one is going on right now. And then the last one here is the protection against intentional adulteration. As we can see by the title, this is aimed at acts of terrorism targeting the food supply intended to cause wide-scale harm to public health. This is kind of the next step from that Bioterrorism Act of 2002. Again, publication date was May of 2016. The effective date was July of 2016, so it's in effect now. And the definition of a very small business here is average less than 10 million in annual sales of human foods. If that's you, then you have until 2021 before the FDA is in compliance or is checking you for compliance. Small businesses are back to those less than 500 employees have until 2020, and all other businesses that don't have any other exemptions have to comply by July of 2019. So that's got a quick run through of the U.S. side of things. North of our border here, the Canadian government response was the Safe Food for Canadians Act, which was passed in November of 2012, and it really covers all food that is imported, exported, or traded between provinces. It really has a similar focus: stronger food safety rules, more effective inspections, commitment to service, and more information for consumers. And it has a planned enforcement over the next 2 years. The last update I had on this one, thank you Jane Proctor, was that we expect these new regulations to be published by the end of this year, 2016. It'll be followed by a comment period that'll happen in the first quarter or half of 2017, and that we can expect in Canada these regulations to be in place by the end of 2017. Furthermore, they should be in alignment with FSMA. We're not seeing any major differences there. So the big question that we have to ask each other is the produce traceability here today? And unfortunately, I have to say no, at least a qualified no, not unless you're purchasing product from one of the participating retailers. So the lead are Walmart, who really kind of made this mandatory back in 2013, and then Whole Foods, who started in 2014. And one of the things that's baffled me is I've heard from some of the retailers before that really it was a cost factor of getting this done that was preventing them. And if you look here, we have both ends of the spectrum here of the pricing to the consumer, Walmart and Whole Foods. So I've got to believe if the high end and the low end are able to do this, that everyone in the middle should be able to as well. There are some other companies who have published PTI requirements that have various levels of enforcement. The reality right now is that approximately 55% of the product is actually being labeled today, and what we have to look at is it's labeled, but is it being used on the receiving side? So the reality is most retailers have not yet adopted PTI and do not have case traceability labeling requirements. And what this means is most of that traceability data is lost between the distribution center and the store. And I'll show that in an illustration here in a minute. The interesting thing is most of the high volume grower shippers are already providing case traceability labeling to those customers who are requesting it. And some of them have actually looked at this and said, hey, you know, this makes sense for us, and they're doing it across the board on all products, whether the retailer is asking for it or not. The complication here is in raw numbers of the small to medium-sized businesses, and they will not be implementing case traceability until it's required by the customers or law. So the other interesting development is food service is now rapidly adopting case traceability. And the following retailers have already requested the PTI labels. So if you're supplying one of these, you've probably already got your letter. And a lot of the big food service distributors are now asking for these labels as well. So as you can see, this is a growing movement, and what I was told in the last PTI Leadership Council meeting was that actually the food service sector was growing at a faster clip currently than the retail sector. So what I wanted to do now is to actually give us a quick illustration of a imaginary foodborne illness incident, and then we can look at how the traceability process works today and how it'll work with the new model. So in this case, unfortunately, these 5 people were all sickened with salmonella. And what happens is when there is a foodborne outbreak, your doctor is required by law to report certain pathogen outbreaks to the local health official, the local county health official. And what they do is they start to do an investigation to find out where you'd eaten the foods, what foods you've eaten over what time, and where you got them from. So in this case, the results of that investigation, which could take days to a week or so, is that Jennifer had eaten tomatoes and bagged salad, Eliza had eggs and bagged salad, Jonathan had tomatoes and bagged salad, David had bagged salad and green onions, and Veronica had bagged salad. So the common element here is the bagged salad. So as we move on, the other thing they asked him is, well, where did you purchase your bagged salad at? And Jonathan and Jennifer bought theirs at a Dan's Ranch Market in Boulder, Colorado. Veronica got hers in Seattle at the Super Produce Market, and Eliza David got theirs in San Francisco at the Fresh Hills Market. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Currently, what would happen is the FDA would then request each of the retailers to provide records on the bagged salad purchases over a specified period of time. They would then go to each of the bagged salad suppliers and ask them for records of where they shipped that product over that same time. And this is where the electronic records, the lack of those electronic records takes its toll, because as we can see here, the victims themselves did not actually have the bags anymore. If you think about a consumable item, they probably disposed of the bag when it was empty. So they know they have them, but they couldn't point back specifically to them. What the FDA can see from here was that Slice Salad Company is likely involved in this because the 2 lot numbers that did come up were both from the Slice Salad Company. But because this information is incomplete, the FDA needs to keep doing investigation. So they may actually approach the sliced salad company to do a voluntary recall. And if additional victims show up who do not report buying the sliced salad products, they may issue a general warning on all bag salads. When this happens, the growers who did not have the problem are punished. Not only do they not get paid in a recall situation for the product shipped, but they actually have to pay the retailers to take that product off the shelf. So with that, let's take a look at what the new traceability model will look like here. And that is, in the future FDA processes, the model, all that traceability information is required at the case level, and so everybody in the supply chain has this information. So with that, the FDA is able to request electronically created records and have them delivered to them within 24 hours. With this, the FDA can quickly identify both the supplier and the affected lot numbers with confidence, and at this point they can request a voluntary recall of the sliced salad company's bag salad specific lots 232 and 742, as well as detailed records about where these shipments went. The other suppliers of the bag salads, their product stays in commerce, so the consumers can still purchase bag salad, and the cost and the responsibility of the outbreak are borne solely by sliced salad company. So, kind of looking this a little bit further, when everything comes in with a case, this is kind of how things started, was everything came in, but there was just a pallet label. The problem is when you get to many of these distribution centers, they're not ordering full pallets of the produce. It's going to be a mixed pallet, and this is where that identity is being lost today. So in the new traceability model for produce, what we have is that when we're building that product, we're able to actually either scan the barcode or read that PTI voice pick code to identify the specific product going to the specific store, and then create an SSCC label that would basically have the information that SSCC stands for Serialized Shipping Container Code, and that basically just says, here's a barcode that identifies everything that is on this particular pallet, and for those that are doing EDI or electronic data interchange, what you're seeing is that information is already sent to the receiver, so when they receive the shipment and they scan the pallet, they can actually see already all of the different products that are on there and the associated lot numbers. So the new produce traceability model really just follows that G10 and lot number all the way from the grower through the supply chain, ultimately to the consumer. So what can you be doing now? You know, if you're a leader in a food company, the first thing you can do is create a culture of food safety from the top down. The laws that we see in both Canada and the U.S. are not going away, and it really comes down to the companies that will survive will be those who learn about and embrace food safety. And the case traceability labeling is really, again, their protection of if there is an incident, they can isolate it to the smallest available grouping that's associated with it. If you're a food safety person, get your management on board and start preparing for FSMA now. As you can see, it's certainly not too early. In fact, in some cases, you've got requirements due, if you're a large company, as soon as next month. So start on your case traceability labeling and then use that traceability labeling in your mock recalls to show the value to your management team. One of the other things you can do is attend an FDA-approved curriculum training to become a qualified individual. A qualified individual is someone who will define, implement, and monitor your facility's written food safety plan, which is one of those requirements of the preventive controls. So when we look at that, what we're seeing, whoops, excuse me, here is, we're seeing the ability to put all those things together there. And then from a consumer, you can let the produce manager know that produce traceability is important to you, and then vote with your dollars. Avoid buying from retailers who don't have case traceability. So now let's look at how RedLine is helping our customers approach this and solve these particular problems. We have a whole suite of products that go across many ranges from field harvest to actually just pure case traceability labeling. But our systems really help you manage your traceability and provide visibility and productivity from harvest to shipment. Our systems enable your business to be more profitable with more efficient management of your daily operational activities. And our mobile inventory management solutions enable real-time inventory updates to your host system so your staff and your operations can see what's going on and become more productive. I hear time and time again from the sales departments of the companies that are using our software that they really like it because they can see what they have on hand and know what they can commit to shipping that week. Everything is managed from an intuitive user interface, and we use these rugged mobile devices for durability in the harsh environments that they're used in. And our systems provide flexibility to support different workflows and different commodities. And all of our systems are PTI compliant and with Walmart and Walmart's needs as well as general PTI. So now let's take a quick look at the Field product. You know, Field is really a product that helps you plan and manage the harvest by field itself. You capture the traceability and inventory data during the harvest, and then we transmit that to the office so they have visibility as what's been done and what's coming in. It allows you to print the case labels in the field if you need to, or batch print them in advance. It also automates the receipt of the product into the cooler. As we were really designing this product several years ago, one of the things that we saw was that the receiving process was a big bottleneck. And by creating a pallet tag in the field and identifying what was on a specific pallet, when that was then received at the cooler, we could simply scan that ID and bring it in without having to do a bunch of data entry. We also allow the real-time editing of the harvest plan, and that can be done in the field or that can be done in the office. And at the end of the day, the intuitive user interface is important, and the mobile devices serve the users in both English and Spanish. And we have a whole bunch of different traceability and inventory reports. So now let's turn to RedLine packing. RedLine packing is really something that streamlines the management of your packing operations. It records the traceability information from the source lots to the pack lots and automates the printing and applying of labels on single or multiple lines. So you can use automatic printer applicators. You don't have to, but we support them in this product. We also use vision systems, which will allow us to actually look at the box and determine which label needs to apply to that box for high accuracy. And then we also allow you to, again, receive the product into the cooler from these mobile scanners. So instead of doing a receiving transaction to move it from production into the cooler, you can actually do a scan and say, import this, and boom, it will drive that into your host system. It also provides an intuitive user interface and has a variety of pack out and traceability reports. Again, complying with Walmart and PTI case labeling. Now, RedLine Cooler is probably one of our most prominent products out there. I think we're up to 100 plus, 101 I think we are now at different companies using this product across probably 125 to 140 different coolers. And really what it does is it fixes your traceability, visibility, and productivity challenges in the cooler. It saves you time in finding the product and automatically identifies precise location of each product, so we know exactly which room it's in, which rack it's in, or which row it's in. It also helps you avoid the human errors when people are actually directing things themselves. We actually have directed features which allow you to do directed putaways, directed picks, and this avoids errors and optimizes your stock rotation. This new one here is actually, this bullet is bold because we actually are just introducing this at the PMA Fresh Summit coming up here at the end of this week, and that is paperless fulfillment process that allows us to actually push the orders to the forklift drivers as opposed to them actually having to enter in, I'm ready for my next order, here's the order number. What that does is it really speeds things up. And then the other things that we do is we track the productivity of the staff. There's all kinds of reports where you can look in and see activity by worker, and this really helps you identify who are your stars and who are the people who need additional training or perhaps a new career opportunity. It also will record truck inspections and keep track of what the pallet position is within the vehicle. We validate all the shipments and staging of orders, and we update your grower accounting system in real time. Again, intuitive interface in English and Spanish, and variety of reports that are available. And then our latest offering is myproduce.com, and this is really more of a web-based management for inventory and traceability that works across your entire operations, from receiving through packing, the storage processes, and shipping. And what this does is it enables greater profitability through more efficient management of your daily operations and activities. You know, this really is where I went in and saw a lot of the smaller and medium-sized businesses who were not having inventory live, real-time inventory. You know, it was on a piece of paper with hashtags, or it's in an Excel spreadsheet that someone updates once a day, and at that moment it's accurate. We also enabled everything else, and that is from receiving the product, labeling it on inbound, tracking those bins or totes to whatever location you put them in. When we get into the packing, we allow you to pack the items. You can actually do recipes, so if you had a stoplight configuration of peppers where you had, you know, red, yellow, and green, you could have all those into one, and we would keep track of the individual source lots on all of them. We'll do the case traceability labeling. We track what location it's been put into, and then use that again when it's time to fulfill an order by doing the picking and shipping of the product. So really what we did here is we took some of the biggest elements of our systems that run on servers that are used by many large companies and brought them down to a platform that would enable medium and small businesses to take care of their business at the same level of detail. Nice thing again is everything is managed in one intuitive multilingual system, and it uses these rugged mobile devices, PCs, or a tablet. Again, this assists with the compliance of FSMA regulations and Walmart labeling needs. We even have a little recall module in here that allows you to see what you have information-wise and what percentage of your product is actually traceable. So, kind of wrapping that all up, the benefits of the RedLine Solutions different systems that we have. Number one is higher staff productivity, because once you start being able to see what the activities are, you can get the precision of what's going on, which means your people can work more efficiently. Stated another way, you can do more work with fewer people, or you can do, with the same amount of people, actually bring in additional work without having to hire more. Also, we bring out the best operational efficiencies, and we track the pallet and bin location so you always know exactly where the product is, which allows your sales team to have real-time accurate inventory information. We also manage stock rotations so that you can make sure that you're shipping the right product to the right customer, and ensuring that when you are shipping the product, you are getting that right, because as we know, there's no returns in produce. If you ship the wrong thing, you're calling a broker to take that out of there, or you're negotiating with your customer for dimes on your dollars. Again, we assist in the compliance of FSMA regulations and Walmart labeling needs. And most of all, what we've seen across the board is our systems pay for themselves in usually the first system, and I've seen cases where it's actually paid for itself in the first 90 days. And we have a lot more details on that. If you've got questions, I'd say follow up with us, and we can certainly look at your specifics and help you figure out what that means for you. The other side of our business is we're not just a software company. What makes us unique is we actually provide the hardware, so we have a complete solution, and you have one source to call for all of your support. On the barcode printers, there's a variety of different ones that range from desktops, portables, and high-volume printers. And it really kind of just depends on your environment and how many labels you're printing and when you're printing them. And that helps us drive what is the best fit for you. Again, help you print your bin, your case, your pallet labels. And then the connectivity is available across the board, USB, Bluetooth, it can be network, it can be Wi-Fi. We also have seen a big increase in the demand for the print carts. And the print carts really, once you've got that wireless network in place, the printers can have a wireless card in them as well, which basically allow you to plug into this device that has a power supply, will run an 8-hour shift, and allow you to basically print your pallet tags right there at the receiving dock or case labels at the receiving dock. It's also used in repack areas heavily and in consolidation and staging. And there's different ways of doing it. You don't need to have the big screen here. In some cases, we're putting a laptop on here so that you can communicate directly with your grower accounting system. In other cases, they're just using the scan guns and they've got the printers there and they're doing things like consolidation. When we turn our attention to the automated labeling, we talk about the printer applicators. They can come in from the sides, the top, or the bottom, and these are used primarily on cases or clamshells. We have done some labeling of baler bags and others, so there is special equipment for those special needs. Again, all kinds of connectivity options. And then we look at the mobile computers, and this really enables the information to be entered quickly and accurately, and there's really kind of 4 types when we look at the mobile computers that I'm talking about. We have kind of a brick style, and you can see why we call it that way. We have a gun style, so you actually have like a brick on a stick, and then we have PDAs and tablets. And what you'll notice about all of these is these have all been ruggedized for the environment they're going to be used in. We have had some people who've said they wanted to use consumer devices, and unfortunately, every time we've seen that, they come back to us within a year and say, okay, we got it, we're ready to get a rugged device, because the downtime of the breakage and the just number of broken devices they have is beyond what's reasonable for them. If we look at barcode scanner types, these are things that enable you to just plug it into your computer, and usually we'll just go through a USB port to enter information that you have in a barcode so you can scan it instead of key it in. Main reason for that is your scan data entry is always going to be much more accurate than keyed data entry. Again, 3 main types. These handheld scanner guns, and these can be either cabled, meaning there's a cable that comes off the bottom that goes into a into a USB port, or we can have the Bluetooth one where the unit does not have any cable, but it goes back to a cradle that charges it and has a link back to that USB port. We also have these fixed mount scanners, which we use on conveyor lines, and we're using them in places with our packing system where we're using a pack code to identify who packed the box or what was in that box. And lastly, I wanted to just point out the vision system. So with the vision system, what we're doing is we're actually looking at the image itself, and we're looking for specific characteristics, like with that logo and this box checked, I know which G10 label that's going to be. And we're actually seeing those, making that decision within milliseconds, and getting that label then to the printer applicator to get the right label on the box. And we use this a lot when we've got lines that converge, and we may have 2 or 3 different sizes or styles on the line at the same time. It could be as many as 5, 6, 7 different styles. You might have your A brand, your B brand, 3 different sizes. Doesn't matter to us. We're able to read it with the vision system and recognize those marks, and then it gives us a good alternative for people who don't have the ability to put a pack code on or have a lot of different box types that have unique markings on them.
Excellent. Thank you ever so much for that, Todd. We appreciate everybody connecting in through YouTube. Please feel free to use these contact details to ask any questions, communicate with us. Follow us on Twitter or Facebook or our LinkedIn account. And you can go to redlineproduce.com. That's www.redlineproduce.com to see some of the solutions and product offerings that we have. Again, thank you and hope to see you soon. Bye.